Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of Bird Brain 66, where I am joined by my co-host Andy Teague, wherever you are, Andy.
Right here.
We're being joined today by our good friend and the person who has now appeared most on our shows, Tony Shaffer, so he gets to have that. Tony of Monster Cards. Hello. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off, everybody. We're going to talk about the 1956 top set. But before we do that, I was going to let Tony kind of tell us a little bit about some of the fun that he had at the national show in Chicago. And Tony, before we answer that question, is it going to be in Chicago again next year?
It will be in Chicago in 2023, Brian. Yeah, at the Rosemont. But this year it was out in Atlantic City.
Okay.
So a little bit of difference in the drive time for me. 13 hours as opposed to two. I love it in Chicago, and a lot of people do, with its proximity to O'Hare. But really well attended show. A lot of customer traffic through there, and it was a good place for me to sell some larger cards. I moved to 69 top set, 38 Gaudi DiMaggio. But like a lot of shows nowadays, there's a lot of ultra modern cards that's being bought and sold, and so vintage dealers have to relinquish some of the floor space and the customer base to those coming in for the new stuff, which is really hot right now.
And the other thing I was going to ask you is, it's still true on most of the national shows or even the multi-day shows that the very first day is usually the best day, or is it the last day? Which is better for you?
Sure. So yeah, that's kind of a mistaken, thought that you can come in on the last day and sweep up a bunch of bargains, especially when you have the caliber of the dealer that's at the national, right? They're just going to pack up their stuff and go to the next show in a week or two, right? So generally, the big spenders will get there the very first day. They'll be part of the VIP evening that comes in there, and of course, there's a lot of dealer to dealer action. But yeah, you want to get there early to get the best deals.
Okay. And then final question to you before we start the 56 team set review. What one or two shows do you have coming up here in the future?
Two smaller mall shows for me coming up. Thanks. I'll be at the Champaign Mall here. Got to defend the home turf, and also the Peru, Illinois Mall. So that's where you can find me on the 12th and the 19th coming up.
And both of those shows are in Illinois, not Peru, across the
Yeah, we're
way.
yeah. I'd probably have to bring some soccer inventory down to South America,
Yes.
but yes, that's
Yes.
that's Peru, Illinois.
Yes. And it's a stone's throw from Chicago. Been to Peru many times. So,
Yep. Good old Northern Illinois.
and both just Saturday only or Saturday Sundays?
They are Saturday only, both. Yep.
Okay. All righty. Well, folks, you'll have to look that up on online, Google, and get more information. But Andy, I'm going to turn it over to you because we're going to open up and talk about the 1956 top set. Tell us a little bit about how many cards are in there and how many Cardinal cards, etc.
Well, I'm glad you put me on the spot because I've already forgotten since what we just spoke about a few minutes ago. But that's all right. But I do have some little bit of trivia because I know Tony loves Cardinal trivia. So based on his hat that he's wearing, this was actually the Cardinals' 75th year in baseball in 1956, and also their 65th year in the National League. So kind of an anniversary of sorts for the Cardinals. They were, that's a good point about the Cardinals because they were actually kind of horrible that year. One of the few years you know, during their reign of terror, from the 40s coming into the 50s, they kind of had some kind of downswings on those 1950s teams. But honestly, I can't remember what did we say as far as how many cards were in the set. Tony, I know Tony knows. Should be 340 total in the set, and you'll stump me definitely on the number of Cardinals.
21.
There you
Okay.
go. See, it's a team effort.
Yeah. Well, Andy, I'm going to let you start out by talking about one or two of your favorite cards as we start going through the whole set, and then we'll tap the brakes in a moment, and then we'll ask Tony what some of his favorites overall from 56 because he has a variety of cool stuff to show. So, Andy, what's a couple of your right out of the chute favorite ones in this 56 set?
Believe it or not, it's probably going to be the team card starting off because number one, that's the only usual card that you're going to find in the 56 set. So if you can pick him out in the lineup there, he is actually on that card. And that's the actual second team card there is since 1951. So, and I know, Brian, you have that, you had the pleasure of having that card. But pick that out just because that, we won't see Musial actually on a card until on the Topps card, I should say, until 58.
And taking one more look at the back of that card, Andy, real quick, and I'm showing it so Tony and the viewers can see this. I like it's not your normal, like it's not a checklist. It's really got some pretty cool facts on the back, the number of NL championships by the Cardinals through 56, as well as the World Series titles. The year that the team had the most hits may have been in 1953, and then they've got most home runs by the team. So that's pretty cool. And also over here, they've got the dimensions of which after I guess Sportsman's Park was officially changed over to Busch Stadium, at least that's how it's listed on the back of the card. So
Right.
really kind of a neat look for Topps on the back of the card. Anybody else you want to holler at? And then we'll, as Tony's talking, we'll throw out some other ones here.
Well, I can never go anytime I get to throw red up because one of my all-time favorite Cardinals. So anytime I can throw Red Shandy's up there, I will give him a good mention. As you said, the artwork on the back is really cool on all these cards. As a kid, if you weren't paying attention, you could easily mess these up for the 55s because they're kind of similar in the style and look, So
yeah, with both the action shot, which I
Yep.
like, as well as the headshot of the player. And Tony, I'm showing this one to you because you were asking before we recorded. He says, "I assume you have the Wally Moon." And I said, "Yes, Mr. Unibrow." But again, great cartoons and stuff on the back. So Tony, tell us a little bit. I mean, you mentioned it before we started recording. Tell us a little bit about the history of the cartoons, or maybe not the history, but at least who the artist was.
Yeah, so I did look this up because the 55s and 56s are really interesting on the backs. It's easy to sometimes overlook the card backs, but these really bring it. And a guy named Erwin Hasen, I really don't know anything else about him, did the cartoons for the 55s and the 56s for Topps. And I'll show one right here as long as we're talking about it. I printed this out pretty large. This is off of the Warren Spahn, and you can see he's sitting there with a bunch of scalps around him. So probably something that Topps wouldn't include, in their 2022 product. A good throwback there to the 50s and some of that. I also saw that on the Irv Palica card, they have somebody speaking in a Brooklyn accent on the back too about how he pitches. So yeah, you get away with a little bit more back then.
Yeah, and what was did the scalps represent, like what, victories or strikeouts?
They were just the names of the other NL teams.
Oh.
So yeah, he probably beat up everybody, of course, then and throughout his career. But yeah.
Yep.
And who and overall in that 56 set, I'm sure you've moved tons of obviously mantles and stuff like that. Who is the one or two of the tough guys that are hard to find, and then what are one or two of your personal favorites?
I cater to set builders, right? And usually there's maybe a difficult high number series or something like that. This one, the cards are pretty uniformly difficult throughout. So we don't have a tough high number series or really any short prints to speak of. There's a Charlie Neal that's identified as a short print. But of course, the big guy, Mantle, right? And this set is, before I move on, this is Mantle's Triple Crown year. So that gives it some extra collectability. It's got the last Jackie Robinson card in it. And other than that, kind of is devoid of big star power, right? You have second year cards of Killebrew, Koufax, Clemente. But the biggest rookie card that it has is Louis Aparicio. And then it really falls off down to Herb Score, so not a lot that people are really chasing as far as rookie cards. So as far as being a good looking set and highly collectible is missing that rookie firepower.
Gotcha. One other quick question. I know for some reason, especially in the 50s, card number one and the last card were always, a little bit higher in price. Any insight on as to why that was, or is that still, the norm for the collectors today? Is that still, two of the more difficult cards in those early 50 sets?
This set, the first two cards are Giles and Harridge, the AL president and NL president. Is that right? Or was one the commissioner?
I think you're right. I think it was AL and NL presidents.
That makes sense. Yeah. So while those aren't extremely popular, anytime that you have a set from the 50s or 60s when kids would put them in alphabetical order, especially that number one card is going to be a bit of a condition rarity. Yeah. That's a good observation.
And Andy, for you putting together the 55 team set for the Cardinals with 21 overall, has there been one or two that you recall that were a thorn in your side in order to, find them, trade them, through, buy them or, acquire through trade?
You're muted.
My apologies. I wasn't even talking. I was still muted. I would say for some reason it was Hal Smith, and I don't know why, but that I always had a difficult time picking that one up for some reason.
And what's the number on the back of that?
Oh, 283.
Hmm.
So I guess technically a high number for that, back in that period of time, but it maybe, like Tony said, there wasn't really high numbers or, short prints or anything of that nature. Again, every one of these cards has some kind of cool graphic on the back of it. So it's just phenomenal that this one guy did all these pieces of art on these cards. It's just amazing to me.
Exactly. I was showing the Joe Frazier one. I don't remember. That one happened to be my particular thorn.
Not the fighter.
Thanks for the clarification. Yeah.
Just making sure we're clear.
Down
goes Frazier.
Yeah. Any more you have to. So before I ask Tony a couple of about his, overall some of his favorites from 56, show me again some of your favorites from this 56, the Cardinal set, Andy, who you really like. I got one that I think I know you're going to show, but I don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, obviously, this one might surprise you, maybe not.
Just a great name.
Yeah, well, that as a kid, that name has always stood out. Anytime somebody had a cool nickname, and that's one thing I always liked about the older cards. They always included the nickname. Sometimes they went by the nickname on the card, so that was really cool.
Right.
You don't see that anymore.
Boog Powell.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I wish we'd have more of that, but maybe some of the nicknames aren't user friendly these days, possibly, that these players have.
Right.
Obviously showed the Wally Moon card, but Ken Boyer. Go ahead and mention him because we just found out that we're going to keep our third baseman for at least 5 more years, on the Cardinals. So he's in the long line of the history of a, really great third baseman for the Cardinals. So just figured to mention him. Look at, he's making an incredible play in the cartoon in the back too. Look at that.
But is he making an error on the actual front of the card?
It's possible that ball did. You can call on that. It's possibly that did slip through. That could be the reason he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Not flattering. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a nice call on that. I did really. attention to that before.
Well, I looked at the front and I kind of thought that. Then you pointed out that such an amazing play, and I'm like, that's kind of.
Well, I done the back on the one on the back. I noticed that he was making a incredible play. It looks like,
Mm-hmm.
think based on the angle of that ball and looking at the Grammas card, I think he's actually going to get the ball and field it correctly based on based on looking at that one, because it's a similar. I'll bring that one out too, because it's a similar situation with the
Right.
so some kind of, it's just a weird looking backhanded play there.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is interesting because he's a graduate batter. See if you can see that he's got his capping
Mm-hmm.
on. So.
Yeah. Very cool.
It's very cool. Little cartoons.
This is one of my all-time favorites. I wish they would have used his nickname, Vinegar
Name. Yeah.
Was he? I can't remember. Later on, after baseball, I think he was a state senator.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tony, I know we talked a little bit about some of your favorites too. Tell us a little bit about that 56 Larson card and why you like that one so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's really ticked up in popularity. I was sharing with Brian and Andy how I picked up one that had his autograph on it, but also the inscription, World Series Perfect Game. And recently bought and sold it. I didn't have it for very long. The person who bought it for me put it on their Instagram account after last night's World Series game, right? We're going to peg this to the video to the World Series action when there was the Astros combined no-hitter, and how close they came to a perfect game, but his still stands alone. So yeah, in addition to say Mantl's exploits, people like the card that ties in with the special event from the year, and as a result, yeah, that Larson's very popular as well.
I think we froze.
The Clement is a really nice card. What else? I do kind of like the team cards. They're good sellers. You kind of, I like that you guys mentioned off the top that the Cardinals team card is one of your favorites now, and that this was the first year that Topps integrated them into their regular set. But as a whole, those sell really well. And we also talked for a minute how the ones in the first series, that would be 1 through 100, have some variations, not just the gray or the white stock backs, but also have the team name in different positions, and some more scarce ones where it would say, for instance, Baltimore Orioles dash 1955. So there are a handful that are what they call dated as well, and those carry a premium.
And you mentioned too before we started recording, so the Cardinals are out of that the team photo because of their numbering being at 134.
Yeah, so they're above that, and so you have the only version of the Cardinals team card that there is. So I guess your pocketbook thanks you a little bit on that.
Right.
Okay. Because if it was, guess what? I would have to have
Yeah.
have to have the variation, wouldn't we, Andy?
Oh yeah, back then, yeah, definitely. Now there's just too many of them in the newer sets.
Yeah, same here. So Tony, I got to ask you this question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You may not know the answer. So going back to the Clemente card for just a second, is he Roberto or is he Bob?
He is Roberto on that one. I know that it, changes every now and then. And, word was he did not like the Americanized version of his name, Bob, on the cards. He wanted to keep his heritage, his Puerto Rican heritage intact, and have it be Roberto. And I don't know really why they did change that. I don't know if it, was for space or how that worked back then.
Yeah. And Andy, you and I have talked about this before. Tony, I can't remember if I've mentioned it to you, but when I was really super young and just first started going out, Andy and I would go to the flea market in Belleville where we grew up. And there was a guy that we called the Cardinal guy. We talked about that a lot, but they're when I was collecting the Aarons and stuff, and a lot of that stuff I eventually traded to you to get a lot of my older Cardinals stuff. I was not bright enough, I guess, at that age to realize that Bob Clemente was the same as Roberto. So for the longest time, I stayed away from cards that said Bob Clemente because I thought they were a different player. So that just shows you how naive I was at 8, 9, 10 years old until one day it dawned on me, or maybe Andy said, "Hey, dipstick, it's the same guy," and that's probably why then I eventually picked one or two of them up.
Oh, and so have you kept the Hal Smiths correct then? Because one was a Cardinal, right? It was Hal R a Cardinal, or
Right.
were they both? I don't know who the
They
other
were, I believe, they were both Hal R. Smith. Yeah,
Matter of fact, there's a Leaf card that has both of them on there.
1960.
Oh, the 60 Leaf. Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called the Two House Miss.
Hmm. Yeah. So Andy, going back to you, anybody, well, I'll let you address the elephant in the room, who is not in the 56 set, and that is, the great number 6. So tell us a little bit about that. And is there anybody else in there that
Well, that's one reason I put that team card up, because that's the only card you'll see with Musial on there when you can point him out in the team photo there. So, like I said, he doesn't make an appearance until 58 on the Topps card, and he bounced around on Bowman, a few years there, 48, 49, and what was it, 52 and 53. So, I guess either fortunately or unfortunately for a Cardinal collector, there wasn't in the set or was in this, because it would have been very expensive if he had been in, like the 51 and, the 52 set. So I guess you can consider yourself lucky if you're collecting Cardinal that wasn't in those particular sets.
Yeah, and we, then the flip side of that is that he was, signed that deal with Rawlings, so he's on those premium items. So Tony, asking you real quickly about Stan the Man here for just a second. Do you come across a lot of those museal Rawlings cards, the ones that were on the box?
Very few. I picked one up at the National, and it was in a collection of off-grade cards. That was the first one. It was the slightly larger one that came with a glove, like with a blue background. Some of them are the smaller version with the kind of reddish, orangish background behind them. Those seem a little bit more common, but yeah. Even with a staple hole in that guy and just the jagged, ragged edges, I sold that card for over $100 just to explain what a rarity that is. You know, and I was going to ask you guys, I have a unverified internet story here of how Stan got back into the 58 set. Anybody know how that happened?
I don't remember but you probably got a better version than I would have anyway.
Yeah. I mean, all I know is that it was both he and Ted Williams that complained that the superstars should be paid more than just. And I know that's why they had their beef. I know that's why Stan went to Rawlings, and I know that Ted did that whole what was it, a 60 card
59 Fleer set.
59 Fleer, yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead with your story. No, I mean, I haven't heard anything on that.
Yeah, so maybe one of the viewers can verify this. I read it in one place that finally in 1958, Cy Berger, the Topps president, donated $1,500 to one of Gussie Bush's charities of choice, and that finally mended the fence and got back Musial into Topps sets.
Gotcha, because he's on that All-Star
in 58, and then has the regular cards, going on through 63 then.
How difficult is this one? I remember this one too, Andy. I went back and was hurrying up and looking. This one seemed like it took me a long time to acquire.
Yeah, you're right. That one was kind of tough too.
I think this is his rookie card, and I know that he was, just had a very short stint with the Cardinals.
And his Bowman card is tougher than the Topps card, obviously.
Right. Do you move a lot of those Bill Verdon cards or come across many of those, Tony?
Sorry, he doesn't stand out to me one way or the other.
Okay. I was just kind of curious.
I
Anybody
remember
else?
obviously because we weren't old enough to remember any of these guys when they played, and we weren't even born yet. But we always remember Burden as the manager of the Astros. That's where
Mhm.
as a kid. So
Right.
as again, a long line of Cardinals that became managers down the road.
Yeah, we'll have to do a show sometime on that. This is another one of I just have always been I mean, one of my fan favorite cards, even though he played way before I was born, just always have liked the Walker Cooper card. And oh, Andy, you ought to point out how do you store these? Because obviously they don't go in the nine pocket sheets. How do you store your 55s and your 56, the ones that are the horizontal cards?
One of the 8 pocket sheets actually
Yep.
that I picked up. So you got to find those out on Amazon or someplace. They're difficult to get a hold of. There you go.
Nice.
Actually, you can get the little penny sleeves too for these size cards for the larger 52s through 56 till they came up into what we know as the regular size card now.
Right.
Now, Brian, I see the variety of the backs, the stock that you have there. Are you an animal about collecting both the white and the gray back stock, or is one good enough for you?
Right
One's
now,
good enough for me, I'll tell you that.
yeah, right now, because there's still other really cool things that I want to acquire. I mean, if I come across a really nice, something that's too good to pass up, I'll go ahead and do that. Like what is it? Is it oh gosh, what year is it? Is it 57 where the players, the team names or their names, most of them are white, but there's a few that are yellow.
Yep.
Oh, sure, 58s. Yep.
58s, yeah. So I've got, I think maybe one time you had one in your for sale for like $5 or whatever, and I picked it up just because it was a good deal. But some of the variations, Andy and I don't know, we have weird, I don't want to call them rules or guidelines, but we've always been pretty aligned in the way that we collect.
Okay.
So he's kind of like my voice of reason and vice versa. So we're some of the older stuff. I don't necessarily have to have the variations to have what I consider the complete team set. And the same thing, especially now with all the newer stuff, where
Right.
card number 121 is of 2022 is Albert Pujols, and then there's 3 variations, and 2 of those variations are either Stan the Man or Ozzie Smith. I don't
Mm.
I don't consider that
Yeah, the only time I really picked up any like short, intentional short prints, or if it like a lot of the newer heritage cards that they've done, they've made like Molina or Pujols short print, and some of those runs, and so yeah, just to get the team set, you have to pick. You got to, by default, you have to pick them up to complete the set. But then a lot of times they'll do some kind of photo variation or numbering variation, whatever it happens to be. But to me, you don't have to have every last one of those that completes your team set because it would just be financially ridiculous to do that.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
like Brian said, you can't get other cool stuff.
So Tony, tell us a little bit. Andy and I collect Cardinal only cards in the 1956 set, which we are reviewing. I mean, what's considered like 1 or 2 of the really hot teams? Is it the Cardinals, or is it the Cardinals and not because they were no real superstars without Stan Musial in there? Who are the hot teams in the 56 era?
Yeah, in 56, unsurprisingly, the top teams that were usually duking it out for the World Series, the Yankees and Dodgers, still remain the most popular. Not only do they have the big guys, the Mantle and Jackie, Duke, and Yogi, even a lot of their, lesser known, well, I shouldn't say that, but even their more routine players are better known in the hobby, the Carl Furillos and Levines and Gil McDougals and guys like that. So those teams still remain the most collectible.
And so, you mentioned the Nationals show. You mentioned, well, you and I ran into one another several weeks ago at one of the shows in St. Louis. Is it getting harder for you to find folks who are selling vintage stuff so you can, acquire older collections?
It is actually, yeah. So I'm not seeing, even dealer to dealer, the quantity deals that used to get passed around a show. Like I mentioned at the national, before the public comes in, we have the dealer to dealer action, and it's a lot tighter, right? There's a lot less flow of cards going around during those times. So whether dealer, collectors, yeah, it's a little bit tougher to pick up the vintage stuff.
So how does one or I guess the better question is how do you find out like when you made your trip recently to Central Missouri to acquire a collection. Now, did you buy that outright or are you doing that on consignment?
Yep, I took it on consignment. And that's yeah, an old customer, longtime customer of mine who generally works in blue chip rookies and Hall of Famers, vintage Hall of Famers too, but all the way up to the present. So that one had everything from Jack Chesborough to 27 Michael Jordan rookies to Julio Rodriguez cards. So dealing in just the biggest names throughout the years, and yeah, all for the major sports. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Andy, I don't know if this has happened to you because of our show or not. And I'll ask you this question and then I'll answer my own question, but I'll start with you. Because of what we're doing and, you're telling coworkers, blah, blah, blah. Has anybody approached you, in the last 6 months or a year since we're more than a year old, but has anyone approached you about asking for advice on, selling cards or acquiring any vintage stuff?
Yeah, I've actually had a couple people, talk to me about that. And I said, first of all, because the way you and I do things, I said, just enjoy what you're collecting. I said, because I think a lot of people are doing it for an some kind of financial investment. I said, that's not the way to handle a financial investment is through, baseball card or whatever, comic books or anything of that nature, because the market is so, you know, volatile at any point in time. So I said, enjoy it. If you get lucky enough to pull something cool out of a pack of cards or whatever, or pick something up, that's great. But just enjoy the hobby more than anything. I think that's the most important lesson I could ever give anybody. I said, unless you get the opportunity, like maybe like Tony's, buy somebody's collection or something as a decent price. Just get what you like and then just enjoy the hobby. I apologize for the blackout there a little bit earlier, but I fell out of the chair.
I wish that should have been live.
56
Well,
second
I
get
was
really
actually
exciting.
going
Yeah.
down, and I was actually able to hit the video button because I don't think she sat on a chair. I sat on a ball because of my back, and I had leaned too far over to the side, so I didn't want anybody to see me collapsing into the side of the cabinet.
I appreciate that.
Looks like a Ken Boyer moment you might have had there with the ball.
Oh well, yeah, because it was getting through my legs, so I had to get that ball real quick.
There you go. So Tony, well, I'll answer this question first, and then I'll ask you my next one. But so I have some friends of my parents who I haven't done it yet, and this conversation is reminding me I should make that call tomorrow, and then I'll ask my next question. Tony is so they want me to get a hold of this person who is looking to find out what sort of a value they have in their collection, and you know would I maybe have the potential or interest of moving cards for them. So I haven't made that call yet, but my question to you is, do you still get approached, probably not at shows so much, but do people, find out your name through word of mouth? And do you still get those people who have gone through, not necessarily an attic, but, like their fathers or their uncles or, you know, an older brother's collection, and they come to you and you know, find a few gems? Does that still happen, or is that few and far between?
Fewer and far between, but you're right. Once people know that you are a car dealer, you know, maybe it's their own collection that they haven't revisited in a long time, or they have a relative, or people have taken to asking my wife. You know, she works at a hospital and has a lot of coworkers. So once they know what her husband does, they'll be like, "Oh, I have, you know, some." Um, but you know, it's really the signal and the noise, right? You need to cut through and see if they have anything of value. And really the easiest way to do it, I've found, is to just have somebody snap a couple of pictures on their phone and text them to you, or email them to you. You just learn so much right off the bat, right? If they have 80s stuff, or if they have 50s or 60s cards, you also know the condition, and chances are they'll know some of the bigger names regardless. So I say, you know, send me some of the highlights. And so just a couple of pictures will tell you so much about the collection and whether it's worth pursuing or not.
All right, last question to both of you guys, so then we can get ready to wrap this show up. This has been an awesome one. So, Andy, I'm going to ask you this question first, and I kind of have a feeling Tony is going to 100% agree. He may tweak the year a little bit. So, what is the last year, Andy, you consider a vintage card before it transitioned over, you know, into what's not considered vintage?
Man. Well, as we get older, that's a tougher question to answer.
Right.
I'd probably go like with an 88 score. I'm kidding.
Thank you. I knew you were. I knew you were, because I think Tony was about ready to fall out of his
That's
chair.
a good thing I'm not sitting on a ball. Yeah, that's
Right, right. I think now I would consider anything probably 69 and going back, you know, and the reason I say that is because for me, because Mantle was kind of the king of tops during during his time period. So, and that was his last year with with tops, you know, obviously because he retired. So I would say 69 and going backwards from there. I don't necessarily consider 70s vintage yet. I know, I mean, I guess if you're probably a record collector or something like that, you probably would consider that vintage. But as far as cards are concerned, probably not yet. Maybe in another 5, 10 years, maybe, but just not quite yet.
And Tony, same question to you.
Yeah, that's a good one because I have kind of a varying answer. If I want to be really strict about it, I would probably say 69 or maybe 73. But if I'm wanting to give someone the benefit of the doubt, I would probably go up to 79 and you know, be kosher with that being vintage. Those sets are still plenty collectible without exactly being junk, up to 79, I would say. Um, so if it makes somebody feel better, yeah, I'll let them get away with that.
You're too gracious. Yeah, I would say the same thing. For me, it would maybe be the moving the needle to about 75, 76, because there were so many great rookies in both those 2 years. It gets a little watered down from 77 to 79. I know that the 80 set has the Henderson, but Ricky Henderson rookie, but now you're starting to, when the Tops was starting to mass produce cards and stuff, and that just kind of turns me off personally. So, on that note, anything else, Andy, from the Cardinal set, so we can wrap up? You want to show one last card, and then I'll let Tony tell everybody how he can be reached.
Let me trying to think. Really, I mean, nobody particularly stands out because it's just that year with the Cardinals that nobody really, you know, obviously then Boyer and a couple of the ones that we showed already. Um, I would probably have to go. Yeah, this is kind of tough. Probably this one because I'm assuming that's Jackie Robinson sliding into home right there. So I would have to go with this one
Cool.
because it does.
Yeah.
That's a Brooklyn hat.
Yeah.
So that I would make that assumption. So I would have to go with that card right there. Just
And
you got Jackie Robinson on a Cardinal card. So there you go.
I would agree with that. More importantly, I would say good call on your part. I don't know if I've ever noticed that before.
Yeah, I just happened to notice that one time. I was like, I said, man, that's Jackie. That must be Jackie Robinson they were trying to portray on that in that drawing. So I'm going to go with that one because the other, I think they're all in. The rest of them are all individual player shots or whatever you want, player drawings, or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, cool.
So there you go. I got a 56 Jackie Robinson card.
There you go. Hey, I'll take that. It goes to my argument when you only collect Cardinal cards, you don't have any other stars. I'm like, yeah, I do. When there's Stan joined by Willie Mays and Ted Williams at times, and then those sort of cards. So yes, I do have those superstars. They're just part of a Cardinal card. So there you have it. So Tony, as we're getting ready to wrap up, tell everybody how they can find you, and more importantly, if we get somebody new who's watching this, give that idea one more time of taking some pictures and sending it to you if they have something that they're interested in seeing its value or having you sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And great to talk to you guys again. And I appreciate you letting me have the opportunity to promote. So I found this from last time, and anybody can just pause right here instead of me reading off. There's everything: eBay, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which Instagram is growing quite a bit. But yeah, through Facebook or Instagram, you can also send me a quick snapshot if you're looking to sell your collection. Yeah, just sort out a couple of the highlights and send it my way. I appreciate it.
We should do that too, Brian. That way I don't have to remember every time you ask me that question about social
Put
media
your
aspect.
graphics team on it and get something that'll come up on the screen. Yeah.
Well, I am the graphics team. I haven't done that yet.
There's your homework assignment, Andy. Like you don't have anything else.
You know what? I'll do that. Watch. I will come up with something now because Tony threw down a gauntlet on that. So now I'm going to have to come up with something.
Well, you've got a nice whiteboard behind you too there, Andy. You could be promoting. I mean, I don't want to, tell you to take anybody
what I'm trying to
down
do
there,
is I'm hoping some ball clubs are taking a look at Dylan Carlson because we really need to move him.
Yeah, that would be a great spot to write, your new website or the Twitter or the Facebook handle for you.
Because they do have Wayno over here, so he's coming back, so that's okay. But
yep.
Yeah. And just since we're talking World Series a little bit earlier, I keep telling Brian, I was telling Brian when the Yankees were still in the playoffs that we traded the wrong center fielder because Peter had an incredible postseason. He hit 5 home runs and hit 333. He was the leading hitter on the Yankees in the postseason.
Yeah, they must have the secret sauce for the ex-Cardinals because Carpenter, of course, went there and went on a wild tear.
Yeah. So there's my useless input to anything, right?
Hey, that's all right. Well, everybody, we're going to wrap up. So thanks again to Tony Shaffer from Monster Cards for joining us. Again, you can go back and pause that. Andy Teague is the co-host. I'm Brian Bretsch. This is BirdBrain 66. You can find us on our YouTube page, which you're watching right now, Facebook and Twitter, all at BirdBrain 66. And we thank you all for joining.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.